Hello and welcome to the Wonkette Weekend Live Chat. I am Robin Panacchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson. I am still having trouble pointing to the wrong direction when I do this. We were not fighting backstage. I just couldn't find a charger. Yeah, so meta. We're breaking the fourth wall. How are you doing today, Stephen?
I am well, and yourself?
Oh, peachy. You know,
So,
just living.
so we now, as a longtime follower of The Crown, and having just finished the season 4, we're now at our Queen Camilla stage of life in the world,
Well,
and
no, she's getting queen consort, right?
I think they get to just call her queen. Like Queen Anne was Queen Anne, and
Yeah.
it's just like technically you're the queen consort because you're not the hereditary queen. Um, and it is just fascinating. I'd written when Queen Elizabeth died. I think I tweeted, and I was able to tweet this without much backlash because a relatively benign comment, which was just that the monarchy is effectively over. Like Queen Elizabeth is a huge historical figure. You know, her first prime minister was Winston Churchill. Her last was the Gen Xer who killed her, which is very touching for my generation. We meet the queen and she dies 2 days later. And now the new king just has none of that history. It's like the TV show is still continuing when the lead has left. And there's just sort of no one wants, like, okay, well, these actors still want to get paid, but the show really makes no sense without if the lead has left. Sort of like we're kind of at the aftermath period of the monarchy, and it's interesting. I think one big problem is just literally the king is inherently a problem, right? Like with the queen, and you've commented about some of the unfortunate girl bossing of the queen, but there was a sense of
the queen a feminist too?
No, my
God.
Am I a unicorn? This is always very fun games, but you know, the queen was inherently, I mean, to the extent as Bell Hooks
girl power genocide and colonialism version.
Yes. Well, as Bell Hooks says, feminism is not self-actualization, but that is how Americans have viewed feminism for quite a while. Unfortunately, a lot of women gaining power, being the first CEO, access to power, everything. And so within this context, you know, the idea of a 25-year-old queen, like in 1952, is hard to kind of imagine. Like now, if the sovereign was someone born in
it would be super weird if the queen was
like it would be like, what's her TikTok? What's her, you know, like, incredibly young. Philip was 31, just incredibly young. I think the Crown sort of touched upon that in you know, relatively remarkable youth that they had. And there's inherent underdog nature. It's ridiculous to say that a monarch is an underdog, but she's a woman, she's young. Her first prime minister is Churchill. So you flip that to now, it's certainly less compelling dramatically, right? You have the young prime minister is a woman. I like to say that she's young because we are only a year apart, so I want to pretend that I'm still young. But the young prime minister is
You're very young and vivacious, Stephen.
But the king is this old so he just sort of steeps into the antiquated nature of it, and it's hard to. There's no story of like the young queen being underestimated by the men around her because
it's just like a dude who wanted to be a tampon one time is like
like there's no like her advisors were men who said this is how things are. This was she had to kind of resist that or succeed or not succeed. But it was still a male-run world. Here it's just like a guy who just trained for a job all his life and got the job, whose sole whininess, like he's a compellingly whiny guy. Like he was he was heir to the throne and married to Princess Diana. And for most people, that was a genie's wish. But for him, that's terrible. It's like, oh my God, I'm so unhappy. I want to be with Camilla. And most of us were like, really? Okay. But it's hard to kind of,
love is love.
yes, but for the public, and given how he treated his wife, like, love is love to an extent. Well, you marry this 19-year-old, so you probably should stay in this marriage and not, drive her into psychological distress for your own cruelty. Yeah. So I think there's a sense.
I think we all kind of know that he's kind of an asshole. Like, I mean, we do. I mean, we also knew the queen was kind of, I'm not going to, say anything because I don't want to get in trouble right now. But,
she presented far better than Charles did. Most people knew her and talked about her. And obviously, she's a queen, but like, there are stories of her being generally hugging Michelle Obama, being encountered by someone who didn't recognize her, and being generally speaking, the stories of her is of despite her.
I'm sure that really means a lot to like the people of Nigeria and India.
Yeah, well, the problem with that is like, yes, I mean, I saw this and was like, look, the queen is dead. If you wish for Britain to engage in a sense of we've really screwed the pooch in the past and we've been terrible, the best way to do that is to not, be gross about a dead person. Like, there's no reason you can't. I think, and Twitter is very weird. You can't conflate. There's being very critical of the monarchy, and then there's being very gross. And what I said was, if Hillary Clinton is president, she had voted for the Iraq War. She could be arguably to be linked. Same with Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. A lot of Americans are, as president, willingly part of an imperial that's done horrible things across the country. And no one would really be like, most Americans would be like, oh, well, that's gross. Like someone said when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died.
Well, you can, like, you're supposed to be able to say that. And you're supposed to be able to say, like, oh, this person, did terrible things or was complicit in terrible things. But, oh, if it's the queen, you got to be like, none of that stuff counts.
Sure. I think it does count. I've been very critical of the monarchy. I think what gets conflated, and it's a problem that I think people online have trouble doing, is it's possible to say, for instance, that, and again, an issue I think a lot of liberals would get. Here's my issues with Kamala Harris and maybe her prosecutorial background. Here's why I think she might not be the best choice for the 2024 nomination in 2028. And as we've seen, there are people who won't even accept that type of criticism or analysis. Yes. But I don't necessarily make my point by saying I hope she dies horribly because she put people in prison for marijuana violation. That is like a horrible thing to say.
Again, I do think that, there are levels to things.
Yes.
And the level to which that rose was not the same as, being a prosecutor. And, and I say this as someone who I think we all know really hates prosecutors, like as a people, except for like the few who are like, what if we didn't actually prosecute anyone? Like, those are the ones I'm okay with.
People are going to disagree. There are people who strongly believe that, and I've seen it, that Hillary Clinton was a warmonger responsible to deaths of many. I disagree with that. I think that was somewhat reductive. There are people who said that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was horrible because she promoted abortion, and all these babies who died are on her. That's fine. Again, I'm not opposed to anyone having their opinion upon things. I've always said, and perhaps because I write for a living or whatever, but what is your end objective?
Well, I think the end objective was genuinely, like, to some degree, like, they were expressing what they actually felt. Full disclosure, I'm like Twitter mutuals with both of the women we're talking about here. but like we're not going to name names because that's not cool. No one needs to be harassed more than they are currently being harassed. Like, I think the point, at least part of it, is to draw attention to this shit that actually happened that was horrifying. And, you know, the royals in general are like horrifying. Like,
Sure.
you know, give your damn, like, just like everything where they're like, oh, look, you know, she looks so great in that crown that she definitely didn't get from Michael's. Like, and it's like, can you imagine wearing this on your head? And he's like, no, because those are all stolen jewels from like poor countries that you occupied.
And as I've said, I am critical of all of that, and I am critical. It's sort of, again, if your message, and this is perhaps the Vulcan in me, because I'm not as sensitive to emotional outbursts as my child and family will tell me as perhaps I could be. But my sense is, if your point is to get a message, I just never know, like, what did you expect to happen if you're going to say something that extreme? You're welcome to do so. We live in a free world, but you also live in a world where that will be seized upon. And maybe I am much more, because I'm a Black person and because I'm aware of the racism in the world, I am very cautious as to what I say so that the point is not lost. Because what I can guarantee you, the discussion of the larger complicity or whatever gets lost in, I hope an old woman died horribly. That's going to be, you know, they're going to get people who would be like, oh, I never thought about the crown's complicity in these actions. But then you get to a point of it's not. And also, where does that end? Like, we'd want all, like someone had said, I want all the royal family to die. Is that Meghan Markle? She willingly married into it. She didn't just sort of like, okay, this
They
is my
also
family.
left, like they renounced their titles and stuff. So like,
yeah, how much of that though? She married into that family. How much of that is just sort of this did not work
I mean,
out?
there's something. There are like degrees of things. To like, if you're literally, if you're still benefiting from, you know, the monarchy, you know, that's, you know,
Sure.
not great
Well,
for
I think
anyone.
you're
And I
trying to
don't
break
think that
apart.
she, you know,
If you're trying to
pardon me?
break apart the monarchy now, the queen is never stronger than she has been in death. So if you're trying to break apart the monarchy and have it examined, one, it's already flitching on the table. King Charles has presented himself as the sort of entitled, pampered jerk we always kind of thought he was in like 5 minutes. With some, I mean, obviously his mother's died, so be some, but he's this way. You have a chance to address the living person and be like, okay, well, now let's rethink the monarchy and break apart all this stuff. And I think what gets lost is sort of the Twitter drive-bys of very extreme statements. And again, people can kind of do that. That's their, if their goal is not to, but I've seen that in America. I'm perennially stunned because it's like, how do we exist in a world where, you know, Nicole Hannah Jones became persona non grata in certain circles because of a very, and she wasn't like wishing people to die. She was just very, here's the reality of American history. And so even measured statements can be attacked or misinterpreted. And so if you're going to like go for the extreme, and yes, if you want to feel emotional, if you want to feel good about it, that's fine. So
I think so. Like, I do understand going for shock value sometimes.
Yes,
On occasion.
I just tend to, like, unless
but
you're
like the right wing reaction to this has been like so unbelievably hypocritical and also poorly informed. Like they keep referring to one of the women who is a linguist as a critical race theory professor. And, you know, for like years, they've, you know, been yelling about professors getting in trouble with their schools for speaking their mind on issues. And now they're all like, yeah, she's getting in trouble with her school for speaking her mind on an issue. Like,
yes. Well,
this
that's
is
sort of
perfect.
cancel culture, and people have commented on that. Obviously, conservatives are obvious, you know, hypocrites about cancel culture and what that means in quote unquote canceling people. But
You know, I think what it is like when someone who was, you know, responsible for so much, I think it's just like, sorry, when someone was responsible for so much grief, like, and like personal grief in your life is what these women were talking about. Like they were talking about their actual relatives, you know.
Yes, the problem is the extent to
Like
which
it's
you can
really hard to watch them be celebrated.
the extent to which you can directly link that to the queen, and maybe they feel they can. To the extent you can directly link that to the queen is tough.
You know.
It is not like but it's not like linking actions to Hitler, again, even linking actions to Donald Trump. So I wouldn't, and I just want to, for full disclosure, I would never wish a horrible death on even Donald Trump or Ted Cruz. I think for me, but I feel psychologically more healthy, I would feel relief. And I felt this way. I've said this before. If Trump had died of COVID, and I wasn't saying, like, people were doing this whole thing of, oh, it's good news, he's going to be okay because he's the president. It's like, actually, no, I feel like the country probably would be better off if he was no longer here. He is actively a threat. I still feel that way. I would not celebrate his death or wish something horrible. I can't go that far myself. All I can say is I would feel relief. No one's life is demonstrably better because the queen has died. That is very hard to get, and I think that's going to be hard for people to grasp. You could feel that way. I don't disagree.
I'm not saying that that's the case. What I'm saying is that I think it is very difficult when someone has been responsible for like all of, you know, or, you know, at least like partly responsible, complicit in, you know, these horrors in these people's lives, that, you know, they have a right to feel some kind of way about that person being celebrated, you know, like, and it's,
people will say the same about Hillary Clinton. They will say,
but Hillary Clinton didn't do like literal like wasn't, you know, involved in any kind of like literal genocide.
But America has had a very negative history across. So Iraqis would have a great, and to me,
I think they have every reason to hate our guts.
Once you go down a dehumanizing path, like, and as I said, no one, a lot of the people, I feel like, so everyone kind of sucks in this for me, because like the Republicans are being hypocritical, but I think a lot of liberals are being hypocritical, because if the same logic could be applied to Kamala Harris, could be applied to Joe Biden, and they would be the first to be like, oh, that's a horrible thing to say about them. But the president and even the Speaker of the House, these are people complicit. Nancy Pelosi doesn't go around apologizing for, you know, American foreign policy or American actions.
Or the insider tweeting.
Sorry. Exactly. So I just think it's a dangerous.
Sorry, I did not.
It's a dangerous, and again, it's not it doesn't raise. I feel like the issue should be raised of that history. I remember they had a like Queen Elizabeth friend to Africa. I'm like, what? And they had all these photos and stuff. And there's a way to sort of like challenge this and say, okay, well, here's where things were. Here's where, I mean, I think she failed to stand up to Thatcher on apartheid, but there was some back and forth. You'd never really know the Queen was thinking, but that she was more sympathetic to South Africa, to Black South Africans than obviously Thatcher was. But those, you know, the potential to have a good dialogue wound up getting lost in shock value. And I wish I could be more sympathetic. I just get frustrated because I'm always like, why don't a lot of people on the left recognize, especially in academics, recognize how right wingers operate, how the media operates, sort of the modern.
I think sometimes it's like, you know, it's hard to be like, we can't tone police everybody, like, so, you know, I think that people still, you know, have to be able to express how they feel. And, you know, even if you're like, I personally, you know, do not have that same experience, but I, you know, can imagine that if I did, I would, you know, certainly feel that way. Like, and I can't.
I'm not tone policing her because I've never, like, when it came out, I was like, this person shouldn't be fired. This is absurd. I didn't, and I wouldn't have even commented upon it unless it had been a sense of, to say essentially this person should not be fired or people should be fired. People say things I disagree with on Twitter or go too far on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, to me, it's like, it's not so much tone policing so much as I can't be, well, I would say this is a predictable reaction, predictable backlash. It's unfortunate, but it is I don't know what to kind of advise. It's like, yes, this unfortunately happens, and this
I
is
mean,
what.
I don't think it's like my personal place as a, American-born white lady to advise them on anything involving,
Yeah, I mean, well, I
like
mean,
their.
obviously they probably want your support, right? Like, it's
Well,
not
they have it. They're
yeah.
nice ladies. I like them. I'm gonna call
I mean, there's
them.
nothing, we don't have the power to do anything. So this is beyond us as far as what is coming down upon them, as far as saying people should not be fired for expressing their opinions. To point out the cancel culture is, but it at a certain point it becomes like you're making a it's like someone touching a hot stove and saying, this is terrible that you got burned. I don't know what I can do after that beyond like, yes, this is kind of what happens. It's unfortunate because I do believe that we should have this dialogue about what the fate of the monarchy, but also English and British imperialism. I think a lot of people are also confused by a lot of the worst aspects. I mean, people weren't really talking about Prime Minister Wilson, who was sort of the kind of the chief proponent of this. I mean, the British
Yeah.
and that sort of where the dialogues should be. I think there's a lot of confusion also about colonialism, but also the love of the monarchy that a lot of Americans have.
It's a little weird.
I don't think so, actually. I think it
I'm going
historically.
to get you this scarf, which is a thing that I literally own. I don't know because I like the Queen. I like buying weird shit.
Well, yes, and there's a reason. I mean, Americans inherently like celebrity. They like aristocracy. I mean, so many stories. I mean, we go back from The Great Gatsby and others. It's that there's an inherent sense of Americans appreciating that. The core battle in the Revolutionary War is not so much, despite all the stuff about all people being created equal or whatever, it is essentially rich white Americans wanting to have their power and their own freedom or whatever. It wasn't necessarily a rejection. I think George Washington, for instance, had pushed back on being, but John Adams and others, I think even someone was kind of like, let's make essentially another American monarch, another head of state. And there was some pushback against that, but
I did want to address that the Queen actually had like way more power than people think she had. Like she wasn't just like, Miss America, like waving her hand like this and like making public appearances. She actually had like a lot of veto power on a lot of laws. Like there are, it wasn't just like, she's decorative. She did have actual power.
You have power. There's limits to how they would use that power. There was often struggle over that because if you too much of this, you lose the monarchy. So the sense of trying to maintain the monarchy involves essentially being inherently apolitical to a degree. I think apolitical is a tough term because even not making a choice is political, as I was writing about CNN. But they had to somehow appear above it, certainly conservative inherently because the institution is conservative, but to the extent of not overtly political and engaging in certain issues and what they could do behind the scenes. You're right, they were perhaps doing, who knows? I don't really know, but they could never, because if you lose that, if you become an inherently political body, you're easy to be wiped out. There's certainly people who did want to remove the monarchy. They're the small R Republicans. So giving them a chance, creating a situation where you would get a coalition of people who are like, we are done with this because they are unelected people intervening it's kind of in a weird way like the Supreme Court has arguably, despite you'd written about John Roberts' Swinefest or whatever, but it's an inherently unaccountable organization that existed because a sense of maintaining a sense of illusion of above the fray, and that illusion is
the thing is people do inherently, not me, but other people do inherently, like the idea of that and are comfortable, they do want to believe that entities like the Supreme Court are apolitical even when they're clearly not, or that, you know, the very existence of the monarchy is apolitical somehow. Like, which, you know, again, I don't really think it is. Like, sometimes, you know,
well, yeah, well,
everything's political.
what was Meghan Markle's challenge? So again, I was never victim blaming, but it was sort of, oh my God, this is going to be a terrible situation. I remember perhaps being the spoil sport on that, because I think there was a lot of people, and it's sort of akin to the girl bossing you were talking about. So the idea of marginalized people gaining access to historic areas of power is seen as a victory, but it's like, well, those things of power are inherently flawed and corrupt. So how will this person thrive in this environment? Like, the royal family is based upon, through divine right of birth, some white people are better than other white people, and the people who buy into that, you
Like,
believe
that really means that, like, God
yeah,
wants them there, which
and you
is like
believe that they
crazy.
will be okay with a black person being part of this. And especially because in a lot of the more hardcore monarchists, the people who support the monarchy are going to be more inclined to lean onto the white supremacist side, right? And then the
Yes.
people who are kind of like liberals, who are like, hey, well, why shouldn't Meghan Markle be in the royal family, would be people like us who aren't monarchists anyway. So
Okay. I would say that, like, there are, like, you know, moderate liberals who'd be like, you know, why shouldn't she be in the royal family? And then there's, I believe I'm on team, there should not be a fucking royal family. That is insane.
So,
And, you
but for
know,
her,
I'm
that's
sorry, but the amount of money that they spend on, you know, they could feed so many people.
well,
Like,
there's some controversy over this. So and this is more of, I refer to it as the truth lie into the fault lies into the star, not in the stars, but in ourselves, that situation, because the British got, not just the British people, but all across the country, love the royal family. Americans love the family. Americans, if they want to go, they don't necessarily want to go and hang out in Parliament. They want to go and see Buckingham
I
Palace.
actually think Parliament is a better system than we have, but let's
Yes.
continue.
But the tourism that that the royal family generates is extensive, and the money through that is extensive. I think if you break it down to how much the actual British taxpayer pays, like less than $1. But at the same time, there's the irony that they actually don't. I mean, they own lands, and land owning is not so. I mean, Americans own lots of property and land, so they get money for their lands own or whatever. But it was interesting. Like, I think Prince Charles made like 30 million pounds from his lands, whereas Prince Harry, by virtue of saying "see you guys" and being able to leverage his name in ways that he could never have done as the prince, signed a deal with Netflix for 100 and 200 million dollars, which is like, he's probably going to make far more money than he ever could have within the royal family, because there was certain, like, you can't actually go and make money doing this or doing this. Here's specifically what you have to do. The problem is, like, it is all tied up in the sense that people like this concept of a
But
royal.
also, the only reason that he had that opportunity in the first place is because of how he was born, which
Oh
is
yeah,
the argument that some of us were having about Anderson Cooper recently. But
oh yeah, but he is I mean, that is sort of Americans' idea of, because of your birth, you can leverage your name and make money. He's doing it sort of the American way. Within the royal family, it's like, okay, here's how, and you will not, obviously not be poor, but he's not going to bring in the big bucks. He's not like a billionaire. He could actually become a billionaire in America through leveraging on his name and his fame. I do think that Americans, I mean, this idea that Americans inherently don't like and are surprised. I'm not surprised. I see people like Stephen Miller and Tucker Carlson supporting the monarchy and the royal
oh yeah,
family.
also Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro were going hard. Charlie Kirk in particular was like, the British Empire was the most benign of all empires. I think there are disagree with that.
Of
Like,
all rapists, this is the most benign. This is the most
yeah,
benign of them.
so gentle. Like,
Well, I mean, American imperialism is not that different from British imperialism. So the history, you can't really
Not by that
Oh,
much. I mean, like, we have like a lot of like like, why are we in charge of Guam? Like,
no, I mean the history of the Panama Canal, the
yeah,
history
no, I
of
know. I'm just saying.
Hawaii, like we have a lot of stuff that's shady. So it's not surprising that conservatives will support that. Also, I think, and I think, and as I've said before, of George Washington, the pushback against him becoming, essentially an American monarch, there's been a lot of people want that. They've always wanted that.
No, I
Right?
do think that there is like that urge in people. One thing that people may not be too hip to is the fact that there are like literal American monarchists in the way that they would specifically like there to be a monarch in America. Actually, like this guy who hangs out at the bar next door to me, and is quite a character, is a monarchist. He also talks exactly like Wimpy from Popeye, so it's a trip,
You mean,
and looks like
I'm
Santa.
sorry,
Like,
like
so just
does he want an actual monarch like King
yes,
Henry, or like
no, oh yeah,
useless monarch?
yes, exactly. Thank you. But um, no, they do. No, they literally want a monarchy in America. There's like a whole subreddit for it. Did I show you the one yesterday, like from the monarchy subreddit, where they were like, "What about feudalism? Feudalism sounds kind of good. I could get into feudalism." Um,
Oh, and I mean, and the dynasties, right? So,
yeah, well, because I guess people do, like the idea of pageantry in a way that, we don't necessarily care about. The one good thing that I would say about it, and I've actually said this forever, is that, we're like, oh, we don't have titles in America. We don't have a class system here, which like we very obviously do. Like that is
oh yes, I think it'd be more
quite,
open. It'd be more open and straightforward with
yeah.
titles.
Like I
So,
want,
like,
I
if
want to
you're
be
at
like
a job
this
and a
person.
person here, you would know that they're the Duke of Asshole. It's like, okay, well, that makes sense.
Exactly. Like it wouldn't just be this, oh, they totally got there on their own. They are a self-made person. Like
No, it's the Duke of. I mean, I think Charles was bullied because everyone was like, "You're not the king yet." When he was in school, you're not the king yet. You're really obnoxious, and he was bullied as a kid in his like private school. Or public as they call it there. But yeah, the American dynasties. So, for instance, when we'd had Bush, Clinton, Bush, and then there were just people on general principle were kind of like, well, should we really have a Clinton again? I mean, this would seem weird. That's like the same family for like decades running the nation. And it became like you weren't supposed to say that because it was Hillary Clinton who was like, no, girl power. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, dynasties are sort of an inherently bad thing, right? And it's still a challenge for Americans to get past. I think the head of state thing you'd been, that people really want, like you said earlier, that the parliamentary system kind of makes more sense. And so, to take that step back, right? So the prime minister is kind of like the closest analog would be sort of the US Speaker of the House, right? Is how that person's picked. But it's not about, the prime minister has to kind of run as the way presidents run, is I'm going to be your leader and lover and all of this. And so it's almost like, why don't we just separate it and like have a scenario where Liz Warren was actually running the nation,
oh,
could have the kind
no, I think we actually have discussed this before. Like, because they're like, oh, like the people who are like, oh, we want someone who's presidential. We want someone who like presents a certain way. I can see how like, just like having that for those people, because like, the British, they can have like, in very odd looking, articulate people who just happen to be, in someone's estimation, good at their jobs, not necessarily in mine. But that's part of the reason why they have had, female. I think we probably, weirdly, if we were a monarchy and we would have had a female president by now.
Well, I mean,
Just
Pelosi
because,
would
yeah,
count, right? She became,
yeah.
essentially she's picked for sort of a similar process, not identical to the prime minister. And you had Pelosi, but like getting the head of
But I
state.
think that like, in the US, there is a problem where people do want like both a king and a prime minister wrapped into one.
No,
And I think that certainly causes problems.
Well, the queen and the king. So the king could give a speech and be like, "I'm for all of you. I will serve all of you." And it makes a degree of sense for the role he has. Now, when Biden says this is inherently absurd, it's well intentioned. I get it, but half the country does not want what you want, and I think we want to believe, and like what you believe is doing as the best. It's an inherently political role, so what you're doing is inherently divisive. And so what happens is they say, "I'm going to unite the nation," and Republicans just sit there waiting for the first bill. And it's like,
well, this is like, no matter what, they're never going to actually unite the nation. Like, that's not a thing that is
only
happening at all.
Only if you're inherently a symbol, right? So essentially, like the queen is the symbol of essentially idealized Britain or whatever. And if you could just literally, the president was just some woman or man or woman wearing an Uncle Sam outfit and just waving and speaking platitudes, that would work.
I think I would be really, like, it could be me. Like, I don't need to have like more money than I already have. I can just like wave and be cute.
Oh yeah, I mean, isn't that what happened to Obama? Like Obama, people felt like, especially he and Michelle, was like almost in a weird. I mean, aside from the racists, the people were pulled into sort of that kind of role. Like they had that sort of charisma, and then as soon as he started doing stuff, because it's easy to demonize the guy who's literally doing political stuff. He's not just showing up at hurricanes, right? It's like stuff that's inherently political and divisive. So, yes, you do not get to be queen. You are Italian.
I actually can vote in Italian elections and have, because they get a little bit of a fascism problems.
Yeah, didn't in Rome recently, like the mafia take over? Like the mafia candidate won.
They're real cute this week. Hold on, sorry. I'm very excited about them. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes, yes, but right wingers are going to clearly only promote the worst, outright offensive, view of American and British imperialism. And I think this always speaks to the fact when everyone was attacking Nicole Hannah Jones for the 1619 Project, the idea of how dare you say that the nation is about slavery and racial schisms, and that's the inherent, even though you can track all our debates now, is back to that. Everything now, every political argument, every debate comes back to that. It's not about, Charlie Kirk's not upset that we don't drink tea, we don't have high tea, like there's no, the idea that most Americans would be, if you'd have to explain that we fought the British and they have to fight, and the what if scenarios, if the British won, like what does that look like? Whereas like if the Confederacy won, well, there'd be slavery now and Nazi, like it'd be like Nazi Germany.
Well, I will say, if we lost the American Revolution, we'd have health care. So that would be nice.
Yes, that's not quite the
healthcare. We'd have welfare say to be,
it's just not quite the same. Yeah, it's not quite the same dystopia that you present. And it's even Hamilton, right? Hamilton never really mentions that George Washington owned a lot of people, and there's like references to Hamilton in the play, Hamilton's friend who wanted to like enslave.
Oh no, that actually is true about Lawrence.
That's true, but they don't mention the fact that Hamilton's chief guy, he was the right-hand man toward own slaves, is probably not going to be part of this freedom.
Because this is the thing, like, people are uncomfortable with that, because I think that there is among a lot of people this general craving for apolitical, non-controversial figureheads of some kind that, like, you know, are somewhat, you know, people almost look at, you know, the founding fathers as some sort of like religious type thing where, you know, oh no, we can't say that they're flawed. We can't say that, you know, they had issues of any kind, because then that detracts from their divinity. Which is,
yeah, Herschel Walker is just sort of right-wing porn. He just speaks and you just see white conservatives having orgasms because he's so inarticulate and so just everything he says is what they want to hear. But he was talking before about how the Constitution, you know, well, Warnock says bad things about white people, which he hasn't, of course, but you know, the Constitution said that everyone would be treated fairly, which overtly
that is not what the Constitution said.
It just doesn't. But like, I don't. Like,
I would actually be cool with that. Like, let's get a new constitution and it's just everyone be treated fairly. I'd be good with that.
But it's overtly, like, how do you confront like just overt lies? Like, it's not even, this myth of America is rooted in overt lie. And I was thinking,
because people love mythology.
Yeah, but I was thinking this week, like, everyone's like, how could people believe that Trump really won the election? How could the big lie spread? And it's like, well, America's found, like, all these people have been conditioned to believe easily disproven lies.
Yes.
And that is part of our American identities, easily disproven lies. Like Thomas Jefferson owned people and wrote that all people are created equal. And it's like, oh, well, that's different and whatever.
Except for that part. Like,
and you know, well, he like rape a woman. He's like a rapist too, right? That's horrible. No, they were in love, and we'll make a movie about how much they were in love with Nick Nolte. And you know, it's like, no, I don't, because she couldn't leave. So I think that's probably rape. And
love.
And then he lied about freeing her kids. Like, it's really bad. Like that's like sick crap. But you're not supposed to think that, and so you've grown up with
because people want to believe in that divinity, and it's, you know, very much the same as having a monarch in a way. Like, people like that sort of like religious aspect to politics that I, you know, don't fully understand, but you know.
So King Charles, Prince Charles, so King Charles is literally like the guy. He is sort of Jonathan Groff's performance of King George.
I love Jonathan Groff. I love him so much.
He's
sorry.
Yeah. I'm sure he would love you in perhaps a different.
We could totally be friends. I believe it.
I'd hoped that that Matrix sequel had done better, mostly because I wanted him to do well.
Yeah, I believe in him.
So, but he's great, and
da, 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 da.
But that's Prince Charles. Prince Charles is absurd.
Yeah.
So, you know, the monarchy probably is in bad shape. It's got that guy, Camilla. Like, it's not long. Like this spinoff is not going to do well. It's like Joey.
Yeah, no.
Princess ended, and now we've got Joey, or it's the Ropers. I feel like that's unfortunate. The Ropers, I felt, should have lasted a bit longer, but it's just not. It's not a good scene. And you know, also because it's just photos of the Queen driving.
Mrs. Weaver is one of my fashion icons. I will just throw out there. Love a caftan. I love the caftan journey for me.
Yeah. Speaking of Jonathan Groff, he was his former co-star Lea Michele has just started at Funny Girl. And got like multiple standing ovations. Right?
Yeah, like 7. No, she was very good. I mean, I've heard the clips. She was very, very good. Again, I think it would have just made more sense to start off with, you know, a person who was good at singing. Like, Shoshana Bean already knew the role. I'm a very big Shoshana Bean fan, as I imagine you are as well. But
yes.
Yeah, but no, I mean, honestly,
my wife went to high school with her. I told you that, right? Oh, apparently not, but yes.
No, that's amazing. I actually forgot to tell people last week that I went to the same high school. I was I'm going to explain why I went to the same that I went to the same high school as Kristen Wiig, but that we were not friends because she is older than I am. But we were friends with brothers. Like her, yeah, long story. But yeah, that is so amazing. Oh my God, is she nice?
I have not met her. I've heard that she is nice and very talented. So, yeah, well, Randy Rainbow comment. He can sing. And he does he's sort of a kind of, I would say, I don't know, this is going to be a horrible comparison and might offend someone. I find him kind of sort of a modern Weird Al.
To a degree.
And
I like Weird Al, you know.
I like Weird Al a lot. I mean, to date myself, I am a Gen Xer. I grew up with a lot of his stuff. And I had a big debate with a friend of mine because she was kind of like, well, it's just the music, and the music is what's catchy, and he's just basically putting garbage lyrics on music that people have already made. I mean,
it seems hilarious. We were also like, I was also laughing at the Jerky Boys at the same time. So yeah, like,
well, I found the lyrics as a writer. I found his wordplay very clever, and his lyrics were very clever. He also was doing a lot of cool videos. I really like the guy. So I grew up with Weird Al. I was very excited about the Weird Al movie. Have you seen?
Yes, my sister's so excited for that. What I really liked about Weird Al actually is that he is so cool about being like, you know what, I said this thing, or I put this thing in a song, and it is bad, and I will not, you know, like, I'm fine. I don't need to do that anymore. Like, you know, the cover of Bad that was like fat. Like there was like a lot of like fat shamey stuff in his work, and you know, other things that were not great. And he is so chill. Like, yeah, no, of course you change when you realize that.
Right? It's like, oh yeah, this was the obvious joke at the time. I shouldn't have made that joke, but do something else. And
he's not all like, oh no, I'm being canceled. My music video couldn't come out today. Sorry. It's like Blazing Saddles, the remake all over again. It's never going to.
You can't remake Blazing Saddles now because all of those none of those references make sense. And
no one knows who Hedy Lamarr is anymore, except for like me and people who are like, she invented cell phones, which is like cool, but like I've also seen her movies.
Yes, or Marlena Dietrich, or the American music, American Western, like things have changed. It would have to be a very different. I'm not actually sure what you would root that concept in if you're trying to modernize something. I think a friend of mine had said that it was sort of, it would be with Obama because he was that is sort of what happened. Like,
basically, there aren't really even like Westerns anymore, except for like Winona Earp. Like, there's not really like, the reason that they did that in the first place is because there were like a ton of Westerns and people were very into that. So it was a parody of things that were relevant at the time.
It'd have to be like a superhero movie maybe, but then that's a parody of itself, and that's hard. It's just, it's fine. It's of its period. And now it's something else, and now we move on to something else. Also, while we're talking about pop culture and the intersection of pop culture and politics, so you'd written today about the Pinocchio film with a very touching opening about how people mispronounce your name, and you try to like, and that you didn't want to be called Robin Pinocchio for obvious reasons.
I got made fun of for a lot. Like, you know, I did not have the greatest time in school, RE bullies, but like, man, it just got like, I had a dual Disney name happening because I had Robin Hood. So people would be like, oh, that's a boy name, which was like a real big diss in elementary school, and also Robin Pinocchio. And, you know, you can't really tell here, but I have an extremely like weirdly pointy nose, which does not help with that. Like I could pop a damn balloon. But oh my God, I just like, I don't know, it's just like one of those things, like, it just like brings back, like every time I even like hear I won't watch any of the new ones. It makes my face turn red, like, which is so dumb.
No, you're
It's like
going
how
to
I'm
be,
also glad that Banaka doesn't exist anymore, because that, oh God, that was worse.
no, you're going to be Robin Pinocchio with what you just
Yeah.
described. That was
Robin
just
Pinocchio, Robin Banaka, Robin well, my poor sister, her name is Gia. So like, people would like usually think that our last name was Panaccia. So it'd be like Chia Panaccia, like Chia the Chia Pet. So yeah.
good
Did
times.
you didn't like Stephen Robinson, what are you gonna do with that?
No, I just got called the N word. It's
Yeah,
easier.
fair, yeah.
You didn't have to be racism. Just didn't create sense of creativity. There's no need for that. You could just cut right to that. No one had to mess the name. It's like, well, what could you this that? Let's just. He's black anyway. But this it. I had seen trailers for this and it looked kind of bad. I don't know if you were writing about. You haven't seen it. You're not going to see it.
No, do any of the like Disney live ones look
I don't. Well,
good?
The Lion King was absurd. It's like uncanny valley to do animals instead of cartoon, and then
They should have
Beauty
done
and the
like
Beast.
what this because the stage show is amazing. I in fact took a dance class with Garth Fagan who choreographed that. But it's my little brag here. But like, oh my God, there are like all these incredible singers and performers that have done the stage show, and the stage show is great. But then they had to like have like talking animals, and that's messed up. No one wants to see that, especially when they're like CGI to look like they're actually talking. You know,
Yeah,
it
because
was one thing with that, like
animals,
Homeward
actual
Bound,
animals
and
can't talk, and so they don't have like just putting a voiceover over an animal
oh,
doesn't
Steven, you're frozen
necessarily.
on me. Am I frozen?
You're frozen. We're back.
Okay.
Yeah, so having that, it just doesn't work. So you probably should do the cartoon, but it always is sort of like but it works. Each one makes a ton of money, and
Really,
it's
do
just
they? Because
like
they seem so
Beauty,
uncanny valley.
Beauty and the Beast was ridiculously expensive. It made a lot of money. Lion, they all come out and make a ton of money, and it's
Yeah.
just you want to shake people and just like, well, just watch the original. There is literally no creative or any interesting twist, and they sometimes do interesting casting,
I
like
mean, I would have watched the Beauty and the Beast one if they had included my favorite song from the stage show, which is Home. I the one. Is this home? Is this what I must learn to believe in? Um, and that's a jam. Why would you not include that? They wrote it for the stage show. They should have included it. It
wonderful.
would have been better.
It's a wonderful Stockholm syndrome song, but lovely. I love it. It's
It
beautiful.
is such a Stockholm Syndrome song.
I agree. I do enjoy it. Um, so I really like the original Pinocchio. I'm waiting for when my son I feel is old enough to get because the whole Pleasure Island scene is hardcore, and I love
It
it.
really is. Although,
My kid, but I'm very excited to see it. It's beautifully animated, all of that. It's a really
yeah.
nice film. Just release that again, clean it up or something, but don't
What if
get
I did a version that was like the actual Pinocchio, where he's like because that we were talking today about how the actual Pinocchio was a lot more gruesome. It involved having his feet burned off, getting almost hanged. In the original, the dude actually wanted Pinocchio to like die at the end, being hanged. They went to Red Lobster. All of this shit.
the
Oh, he killed Jiminy Cricket? Like, Jiminy Cricket was fucking homicided in the original Pinocchio and then came back to life through the magic of not the blue fairy, the fairy of azure hair. Which is,
no,
yeah.
I mean I love all of that. And I mean, both I think Little Mermaid and even Cinderella, like they're much more Twilight Zoney in the
Yeah.
originals with
Oh,
like
absolutely.
and that would interest me, like sort of do like we're just gonna do even if it's just a half hour or whatever, like we're gonna do them straight up as they originally were and they're dark or whatever.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean
my
also,
mom gave me the original Grimm's Fairy Tales when I was younger, which probably explains some things.
well, I feel like they also don't
Like, I love fucking super dark fairy tales. I do. They're like so much more interesting. The actual, in the actual Little Mermaid, when she's walking on sand, it's like glass cutting into her feet, and then she gets turned into sea foam at the end.
Yeah, that's also, that Twilight Zone ending is consistent. Having Rod Serling come out makes sense given the choices the character makes. So when they make these happy endings for both this and Pinocchio or whatever, it just seems to come out of nowhere, right? Because the character is going along the Twilight Zone path, and like then it's suddenly happy ending. It's like, well, wait a minute. Well, she made a lot of bad choices, and and I guess I don't know. They're making a new Little Mermaid, and I don't know how they will address. I mean, I'm all about how they will do Ursula. Except, is it who they cast? It was Melissa McCarthy.
Pardon?
Who they cast in the new Little Mermaid?
Oh my God, I know this, and I can't think of what it is.
Is it Melissa McCarthy who's playing Ursula?
Oh, I hope. I mean, I love Melissa McCarthy, but I kind of hope not.
I was under the impression.
I actually feel like Ursula should be a drag queen because Ursula was based on Divine.
Yes, to take it back to the original, have it be a drag queen would be awesome. Or, it's essentially that role is campy and wonderful, and I would love to. I want a whole Ursula. I would love the whole Ursula movie, kind of like they did with Maleficent.
Yes.
But so the Little Mermaid came out.
Yeah, I would like they should do, like, they've done a bunch of them. I would totally be here for an Ursula backstory, because she kind of like gives it.
Well, also they could they should remake these movies with drag queens as they were always drag queens, right?
Yes, as they were intended to be.
The Wicked Queen, the Wicked Queen, I mean, and they're obviously voiced by women, and I'm saying this in levity, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but they are very camp roles who drag queens have embraced over times because of the camp and their outfits and whatever, and sort of like to turn it around would be cool, and to actually run with it. Give us the drag Ursula, give us the drag Maleficent, give us the drag Lady Tremaine of our dreams, and instead they kind of just go in more boring directions.
What I will point out is that, like, the people, the crazy QAnon people were yelling about Cynthia Erivo being the blue fairy, or the fairy with azure hair. If you want to be originalist about it, is going to be Elphaba in the upcoming Wicked movie, and I'm very excited about it. And Ariana Grande is going to be Glinda, or Galinda, and it's going to be a great time. I genuinely love folk tales. I like the original ones more than I like the Disney ones. But that's cool because I don't want to be a Disney adult. At one point, have I done a few birthday parties dressed as Snow White? Yes, I have. I was in college. Some people do weird things to make money.
Never the queen, really.
I actually probably look more like the evil queen, but no, I did Snow White.
I love the Snow White outfit to get on it, but I mean,
I love puff sleeve.
The puff sleeves is great. So the racists are very upset that the blue fairy was a black woman of azure hair, because much like in the whole Lord of the Rings controversy,
they're like, these fictional people, like mythological people, are always white.
And like the Little Mermaid, that can't be, because all of our studies of mermaid fossils, you can tell their race, and they aren't. The mermaid fossils reveal that they are not, in fact, black. There's like no, one person even was like, "Oh, they even gave her red hair, but black people don't have red hair." I was like, "Well, some black people
actually do. They do."
And she's a mermaid.
That is by Malcolm X's nickname was because he had red hair growing up. But,
it is so weird. And and like you had written that some people were like, well, there are no black people in 1890s Italy. And I was like, what?
They're literally like, look at a map, my dude. Like,
well, I mean, people were we were going many places and sometimes against colonial, against our will. Colonialism has certain impacts.
Yeah.
And that impact would be like this idea that you could kind of go on. Like, we brought all this from the New World or all this before that, but not, don't worry, it all still remained lily white is sort of a very, I don't know. It's interesting because I think something I commented on with the Lord of the Rings arguments, and same with Star Wars, people didn't want, people were so grossly racist about black actors in Star Wars. Others, it's sort of this idea of, this is our sort of, your sort of cultural history, or your stories, your folk tales that everyone grows up in with the community, and to exclude people of color and just say, all these folk tales, none of these people are you. You are constantly, is a constant sort of othering. That's just nuts. Like, this is all of our culture, especially the stuff that's made up. So of course, include everyone in who are part of this sort of, and what often the racists will say, like they did this with Doctor Who. It's like, well, don't have a woman as Doctor Who, don't have a black person Doctor Who, create your own character, which they can then ignore. So,
I actually wanted Cynthia Erivo for Doctor Who. I'm
very glad the gentleman who was cast seems very talented. I'm excited to see how he will play the role. I had hoped we would have a few women as the Doctor for a bit, to sort of avoid the perception that the incels.
Well, because of the writing, this is the thing. It was not her fault. The writing and everything was just weird and bad. And
yeah, I was not a fan of Janelle. I tried not to comment on it because
so did I, because I was like, I don't want her.
I don't want to be with those people.
Yes, exactly.
Same with like the Star Wars sequels. I wasn't crazy about them, but it's like, oh my God, I don't want to be with these outright racists. I'm more like, I'm kind of not crazy about the structure of this. Oh my God.
And she's an amazing, it had nothing to do with her as a person. She's an amazing actress. It was just the writing and the stories were like terrible.
Yeah, nothing new, right?
And bland, they didn't really connect, I don't know, it was just not very.
I mean, within the, you have these grand stories that endure from Tennant and Smith and Capaldi's run, great for twists on characters, new characters. So the Weeping Angels and the Silence, and Chibnall has, well, what is your contribution that can be attached to this Doctor? She deserves contribution. And it's just like, no, well, we'll bring the Weeping Angels back. It's like, oh no, like what's your new?
I mean, I think that the very last few episodes sort of tried to do that with the, sorry, we're being super dorky here, with the revelation, spoiler alert, that the Doctor is eternal, which is a way of explaining why the Doctor has more than one life. And that the Doctor, that shows the Doctor as a young girl. But no, Chibnall was not a good choice. It wasn't good.
The one thing is that
there was no
it is canon. They could try to change it, but the Doctor was originally a black girl.
Yeah.
That's the reveal. And I think people flip their heads on that. It's like, well, no, my problem is more of just.
But actually, that's been canon for a while, because there was, I think it was Capaldi who said something about or one of the masters who said like when we were young girls or something.
Yes. Michelle Gomez, praise be her name, her version of the master said
I want her to be in everything.
She really struck it after that part, because she was in Sabrina, and she's been she played Madame Rook in Doom Patrol, so she's really been kind of making the turn. She's wonderful. I've always been
she has great eyebrows. She is. I find her so goddamn delightful.
I felt like they also tried to avoid her having any kind of romantic, so sort of later they tried to avoid any sort of romantic relationship but that was the big thing with previous doctors. And even if you want, I mean, that the idea,
well, always like that, like, you know, they always installed a little bit of the like, will they, won't they vibe, even with like Peter Capaldi, which no.
You did. I liked Capaldi.
I don't see. Okay, to be clear, Peter Capaldi is a dish. I'm just saying the age difference there was a little like.
Well, I thought he and Alex Kingston, when they were one appearance, him and River,
that was appropriate and good, and I loved her.
Their chemistry was wonderful. So yeah, we just sort of rambled off at the end.
We're just like we were talking politics, and the monarchy and genocide. But now we talk about Doctor Who. We have opinions and takes.
The Doctor is, in fact, an inherent part of British culture.
Yes, it is. It totally
Jodie Whittaker will be the only Doctor, well, so far, whose era includes 2 monarchs, because she has a few seasons now. We don't know. I mean, Charles will be 75 next year. I think he is just trying to hold out to, I would think, outlive the run of his grandfather, who died early. So, you know, you kind of like, I'm not going to be able to do 70 years. That's impossible, but I want to do at least a good 15 or 16. As long as he doesn't abdicate and help Nazis, he will not be the most embarrassing monarch of the recent history. So, you know, that's the good thing about the Duke of Windsor.
Yeah.
He's lowered the bar as to what we would expect.
Yes, we have an announcement. The next movie night will be A Fish Called Wanda, which I actually saw in a drive-through theater.
I thought those are going to come back.
It was a double feature with Naked Gun 33 and a third, I think.
Oh,
or Soap Dish, one of the two.
Soap Dish and Fish Called Wanda would have been an interesting sort of thematic, because Kevin Kline is in both of them.
Yeah.
Right?
I just know that I saw all 3 of those movies at the drive-in, and in some sense, there was a double feature at some point. I was a child.
I really like Soap Dish. To kind of reference your earlier point, Weird Al, it has kind of falls off the rails of a sort of transphobic ending, very transphobic ending. Yeah. But I otherwise really enjoyed that movie.
I mean, I think that it was like a camp classic for a very long time. And, you know, it has its, unfortunately, like there are a whole lot of camp classics that do end up with a fairly transphobic premise. I was just thinking the other day about Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which had that issue. Passions, which I discussed the other day on the top 10. Stephen and I were both very big Passions fans.
Yes, we were.
Passions had a very transphobic storyline. Although they like tried to sort of like ameliorate it, like, no, we're not being crazy about it. We just actually like feel like this is, I don't know, whatever. And even like Pretty Little Liars, like there was Psycho. Yes, someone pointed out Psycho. Yeah.
Don't they explain at the end that he is not transgender? He is a transvestite who believes he's his mom. Like there's a whole kind of lengthy.
Yeah, I feel like Psycho, it's like more like just a situation with his mom, but it is also that, like, you know, well, Silence of the Lambs, that thing where you're supposed to be like, oh no, twist, that person, you know, is, you know, not adhering to the correct, you know, gender assigned at birth, and that is like part of the horror that we're presenting to you. And you know, I really wish that Beyond the Valley of the Dolls did not have that ending, because, you know, it really makes it weird when I want to tell people, you know, you're a groovy boy and I'd like to strap you on sometime.
Now,
I'm a terrible person. No one knows what I'm talking about. It's a movie. It's good. It's written by Roger Ebert. It's also terrible. Have you not seen Beyond the Valley of the Dolls?
Of course I have. Yes, it was everyone.
Okay.
Everyone is. It was a classic midnight film back when I could stay out till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So No, I mean that is, it's sort of interesting as well because the films are often, those films with transphobic or transphobic endings. People who are inherently transphobic also resent the overall sexual freedom
Oh
in the,
yeah.
right. So it's not like, so they can very easily vanish because no one is trying to claim it. Oh, well, you're trying to cancel this. I want to go watch it. It's just you get the left and you get the right kind of steering away, and then these films can just sort of vanish, which is somewhat unfortunate. I do like the idea of somehow trying to watch things within the context that they were made and teaching them. Sometimes it's
No, and I think
impossible.
it's
That's very
important
inherently terrible.
to, you know, do that to some degree, but it is like very jarring when you think about like how the twist to so many movies comes out like, you know, and they're secretly a man, or or they
Yeah,
assigned male at birth, or I don't want to spoil Beyond the Valley of the Dolls for the audience who has apparently not seen it, but there is a twist at the end that is not the usual twist
well,
on that
the
theme.
second
I
season,
am Superwoman is the thing that I'm referring to.
Nip Tuck had a really transphobic storyline where they do a similar reveal, and it's revealed in a terrible way that the character's transgender. The lead character is raping the woman and then realizes that it's not real.
Yeah.
And
I
I
mean,
don't.
I feel like Ryan Murphy has, really gone from definitely making some mistakes with that to trying to get better increasingly through the years. I'm not really sure like at what like where he's at right now.
I
But
haven't seen much of his recent work. That would be interesting because I watched Nip Tuck at the time.
I mean, even like on Glee, I do feel like, certain storylines were very much handled with compassion and who the fuck caresness, which is, I think, more important than anything. But it was like all, it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, we're in the very special episode uh period of things.
Mhm. Well, as we get close to time, what else do we have going on? What else is on your head, on your mind?
I don't know. I mean, you always ask this, that I'm like, I don't know. I should prepare something beforehand. Um,
It's my surprise twist ending is to ask what is on your, what else is do you wish to discuss?
what's on my mind is
It's
my
lovely.
bangs.
Those are lovely bangs. Have
Yes,
you always had bangs?
and yes, yes, and everything I'm wearing right now is normal.
Yes, yes, indeed. I see no reason to comment.
Yeah.
We are aware Ukraine has been, you know, fighting back tremendously against Russia. I'll try to wrap up something about where that stands and to the folks who were kind of willing to give them up. I don't know if I'll bother writing about it, but Lauren Boebert had a debate last night,
Oh,
and
but I feel like that's all you, honey.
I
I
don't,
think.
yeah, I'm not gonna bother but say like she was like really rude to the
Well, she
moderator.
was like, "You liked my opponent in the last race. I'm not doing anything you say until you admit it." Like,
And it's just like, just come and be normal.
that's my
You'll
impression
probably
of
win.
literally everyone. I realize, like, while I'm like watching myself, I'm like, I do the exact same impression of every single, like, never mind.
And it was a wonderful Camp Valley of the Dolls moment in this when um her opponent asked, well, you will you serve out your full term, or even if you get your dream job as a Fox News correspondent? And it comes to her and she's so angry for a while, and then she just suddenly says, that's, well, so my dream job is raising my however many kids she has and her goats. Goats. Goats, Robin. Goats.
Amelia O'Hara.
She has lots
Um,
of goats.
Those are super cute, though.
I don't think so. I I don't. humans are barely tolerable. Non-human animals are not cute. My son loves them, so I will.
I would like some llamas. Because I'm, as you know, I'm a very big fan of State Farm, State Fair, llama costume contest. I'm a connoisseur of those. I like it when llamas dress up in costumes, and I would like to be a part of that.
I think that's something for, so we're, maybe.
I'm messing with you.
Maybe it will be a llama costume for at some point. We won't be recording on Halloween this year. So, but before, so sort of Halloween themed llama.
Yes.
So, thanks everyone. Thank you, Robin, your role.
And thank you, Stephen, for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant.
I try to be both. Goodbye.
Yes.